Goon this, come that. How about you come out of your hovel and touch some grass, you goon? How about you make a connection with a human being? How about that, huh?
Whoa there, simmer down, Gramps. How about we come. I mean, he's got a point, though. Everyone in their Jarvis Johnson has already made a video about AI BFs, GFs, but I'm a little late to the party. I started planning this project a while ago. Please forgive me if you're sick and fucking tired of it. I will at least try to expand on the subject in new and interesting ways that are kind of harder for monetized channels to do. So, let's do it. Let's talk about AI's broad effects on human sexuality through romance, roleplay, sex ed, and counseling, and of course, porn. Yep, you heard me. Not corn, not spicy content, porn. Yeah, I don't make money off this, so I can say that shit as much as I want. On that note, please do subscribe though. I wanted to start with a shocking statistic about internet pornography, but I had a hard time finding reliable, recent, large scale data about the subject. So here's some other relevant numbers to get you to stop looking at your phone or Tamagotchi prison or AI waifu. ChatGPT's most recent data analysis, conducted in September 2025, put their sample size at 700 million weekly active users. 70% of interactions were non work related. Considering how the purported use case for AI technology has historically been as an aid to human labor, this statistic is pretty significant to me. We've been so worried about robots stealing our jobs, we haven't stopped to worry if maybe they'll steal our souls. Or our girls. Hashtag Mr. Steal Your Girl? AI chatbots and similar public machine learning models are apparently the fastest diffusing technology like ever. I don't know, that's according to Sam Altman and researchers funded by him, though, so take it with a grain of salt. I mean, I'm sure the wheel or fire spread like wildfire. Because this tech is ballooning faster than my Sonic OC, there is a ton of related research, investigation, and journalism being conducted all the time, for good reason. But since it grows so exponentially, it's still hard to keep up. That's why we're all fucking exhausted by hearing about AI lately. Trust me, I am too. But a guy's gotta get views somehow. No, but I am genuinely interested in this topic as well. Like any other technology, from the jump, there's going to be people who use AI for sex stuff. We're humans, that's what we do. As soon as we learned how to sand wood, we were probably using that technology for dildo making. So, no, I'm not trying to fearmonger about AI perving up our brains and leading to the collapse of society, but we got to think about this fairly, right? This is a rapidly developing and proliferating technology with social consequences that we're only just beginning to grasp. And I feel like we need to think about its effect on human sexuality so we can address potential issues. In my research quest, I found a lot of surprisingly positive framing of this technology. People did acknowledge potential harms, of course, but they seemed to minimize a lot and leave things out, in my opinion. Just a disclaimer, I'm not trying to provide a balanced picture. I'm providing my picture. I'm going to organize this video into 4 main categories based off of the most comprehensive compilation of research and meta-analysis I could find on this topic, this project by Doring et al. Called The Impact of Artificial Intelligence on Human Sexuality, a 5-year literature review, 2020 through 2024. Alright, part 1, sex ed. Can chatbots really help us learn sex ed? We're beginning with the use case which I think presents potentially the least harm in using AI chatbots and LLMs for sex-related topics, but that doesn't mean chatbots are the perfect tool to supplement sex ed resources as many seem to think. There are still significant issues with the reliability and ethics of using chatbots for sexual health information. I know you guys are all super smart and sexy, but just try to put yourself in the sweaty Adidas's of someone who doesn't have your wealth of knowledge and expertise. Say you're a teen, for instance. Maybe you're just starting to date someone and you feel like you're in over your head with the whole intimacy part. Maybe you don't have the relationship with your parents or guardian where you feel like you can ask sex ed related questions. Maybe you're worried about a potential pregnancy. Maybe you're a queer teen in a conservative community and too afraid to ask things that could out you. Or perhaps you live in one of the many states that do not require comprehensive sex ed as part of public schooling. Or your parents are fundamentalist Christians who pulled you out of school altogether. Hell, maybe you're just embarrassed. I sure as hell didn't like to ask questions about sex as a teen. Okay, so you're a cool teen looking for knowledge. You could, as many do, just open up an incognito tab and Google that shit. Tried and true method generally seems to prioritize accurate results if you don't rely on the AI summary, which just basically scrapes from Reddit, that is. Or maybe because you're so young and hip, you turn to our incorporeal friend, ChatGPT. It's anonymous, easy to digest information in a conversational format without the whole pesky other person thing. And look, the majority of what it says seems to be relatively accurate and harmless. According to Doring et al., again, quote, the limited amount of rather small-scale studies demonstrate that ChatGPT-generated sexual and reproductive health information shows fairly high information quality, end quote. But let's take a closer look at those exception cases where the information quality maybe doesn't hold up. In a 2023 through 2024 study by Haley and Brian McMahon, who are specialists in abortion access and AI, respectively, they explain that ChatGPT told them repeatedly that abortion pills can only be taken with medical supervision. This is not accurate. It also exaggerated the health risks of using abortion pills. They concluded, quote, ChatGPT repeatedly provided responses that overstated the risk of complications associated with self-managed medication abortion in ways that directly contradict the expansive body of evidence demonstrating that self-managed medication abortion is both safe and effective. The chatbot's tendency to perpetuate health misinformation and associated stigma regarding self-managed medication abortions poses a threat to public health and reproductive autonomy. However, the study is low-key already out of date because of the breakneck speed at which AI develops. So it used ChatGPT 3.5, and I wanted to ask for myself to see if it would make the same mistake today, what with the huge developments made since 3.5. And honestly, it was inconclusive, but not super reassuring. I used a similar simple question to the study, asking it how to do a self-managed abortion with pills. Is it safe? The first time I was not logged in, but it apparently knew from my last login that I was a minor. I set it to think I was almost 18 for an experiment, which we will get to later. Therefore, it refused to answer with a lot of specifics, but it did seem to provide accurate information and suggested ways to seek healthcare without necessitating parental involvement, like going to Planned Parenthood. I appreciate that it had a supportive, empathetic tone and that it suggested keeping my info private and prioritizing my health above all else. As much as a robot can be empathetic, you know what I mean. However, I do have a couple gripes. First of all, as in the McMahon study, ChatGPT still said that it may be unsafe to use abortion pills, especially if you have an ectopic pregnancy, which is, to my knowledge, not true. It is not effective on ectopic pregnancies, but it should not be unsafe. Also, despite its offer to help me find local clinics, there are a lot of places in the country where that is just not even a possibility, unfortunately. So the emphasis on seeking validation from the healthcare establishment in this case may not be as useful as one would hope. And in general, self-managed abortions using information provided for free online, like through abortionpillinfo.org, as long as you know you don't have a pre-existing condition and you know the gestational period, is typically pretty safe. Obviously, seeking medical care before and, if need be, after is ideal. I read way more about this than I planned to initially, and the extremely rare complications do sound pretty gnarly. But in a 2020 paper in the New England Journal of Medicine, Dr. Lisa Harris et al. Write, quote, "Given the safety of the combination of mifepristone and misoprostol for self-managed abortion, the biggest danger to patients may be legal prosecution." I kind of wish ChatGPT would have emphasized the legal risk in certain parts of the country/world more than the minimal medical risks. When I used my other account with an accurate birthday, well, let's just say I felt like Warren Buffett, what with all the hashtag cash money wealth of information it provided. I was pleasantly surprised by the accuracy and detail in there. I really had no problems with that response as much as I wanted to. And I think it's fair that it was not able to provide step-by-step instructions and instead pointed to other sources, which I did check out, and they all seem okay. I actually even ended up donating to the Repro Legal Defense Fund, an organization which ChatGPT mentioned. But when I used an incognito tab, the bot flat out refused to answer. And like, if someone's desperate enough to look up this information through ChatGPT, I think they'd be more likely to go incognito with it, or at least not want to be logged into an account with their personal information on it. Especially given the lack of access to abortion in vast swaths of the United States. So that was very unfortunate. I would suggest seeking help from one of the online resources like Repro Legal Defense Fund directly instead of trying to get instructions from ChatGPT, because you will get nothing without sacrificing your privacy at least. On to the next exception case. Exception number 2. The Doring et al. Study overview also brought up the possibility of people asking for diagrams of human reproductive anatomy. In 2024, they tested ChatGPT-4 and DALL-E's abilities to generate said anatomical diagrams upon request. The image Chat generated was a super bare bones diagram due to decency safeguards. It was not super helpful. It was basically just a bunch of dashes. And the image DALL-E generated was fucking weird as hell and super inaccurate. As you can see, the general shape is right, I guess, but the labels are nonsensical, and like, it put plants around the ovaries, dude. What the fuck? Oddly enough, the authors of this overview don't really seem to dwell on the visual inaccuracies, though, and they barely even comment on them, still concluding multiple times and in the abstract, the summary itself, that, quote, they found high accuracy and completeness in the sex ed info provided by AI overall. Doring et al. Seem to be more concerned about, quote, how digital platforms, including ChatGPT or DALL-E, hinder sexual health information and education through overly strict, non-transparent, or biased community rules that are meant to protect minors from inappropriate content, but might violate their right of access to valid sexual health information and education. And I agree. I fear minors are probably the people who need this access the most without barriers and stigma, especially given the piss-poor state of sex ed in the United States. Fun fact, only 37% of U.S. states legally mandate public school sex ed to be, quote, medically accurate. And unfortunately, minors and people who aren't logged in so they cannot be age verified are the people who ChatGPT refuses to engage in a lot of these topics. I set up an account with the birth date of January 1st, 2008, which would, during the researching of this video, make me 1 month shy of turning 18. For my under 18 account, Chat fully blocked my request to generate an internal anatomical diagram of the female reproductive system. That was upsetting to me. I fear it is not a pornographic request to see a cartoon uterus, dude. Like, what does that suggest to this theoretical almost 18-year-old? That they're a weird pervo who wants to jack it to a medical diagram? That it's an inappropriate part of the human body to learn about? Teens are the people who would most benefit from this info, so why are they gatekeeping it? I mean, I completely understand the caution about minors, especially given the harm that chatbots have done to young people, even potentially allowing some to spiral deeper into mental illness, ultimately leading to some taking their own lives. See the American Psychological Association's advisory about youth AI interactions for more info and recommendations. But blocking it altogether, I don't see that as a solution either. It just reinforces stigma for those who most desperately need information. My next step was to ask ChatGPT to generate the diagram on an account using my real age. It took a while, but finally it generated this image. Looks pretty accurate on first glance, but take a closer look. The machine seems to have incorrectly labeled the entire vaginal canal as the cervix. Either that or it massively extended the cervix into an entire canal, which it's not. It's, quote, the lower narrow end of the uterus that connects the uterus to the vagina, from the National Cancer Institute. I can't quite tell which thing it did, but regardless, what it calls the cervix is far too long. And I do feel like it's an important body part to like have a basic understanding of what and where it is for various health reasons, especially because it's a common cause of cancer and you need to like get it checked with a fucking pap smear when you're 25. But to give it a fighting chance, I then asked if it could make it more detailed and label more parts. It replied with this image. Unfortunately, this one is even less accurate than its first attempt. And it said that the endometrium, which is actually the inner lining of the uterus, was inside the ovary and again extended the cervix and provided imprecise positions for the uterus, which is the whole inner area in the triangle part, and the myometrium, which should be the middle lining of the uterus. Here is an accurate diagram from the Cleveland Clinic. As you can see, the cervix is actually a very short kind of membrane area thing, not a long tube. So, while it has improved quite a bit from older AI-generated anatomy diagrams like the one with weird plants shown in the study, it is still freaking inaccurate, and it told me it was. I literally asked, "Is this accurate?" And it said, yes. Like, no hesitation, didn't tell me to get it verified. It just said yes. I mean, there's a little disclaimer at the bottom of the chat saying to check info accuracy, but like, do we really have that much faith in humanity? Like, come on. The same humanity that picked up pubic lice from gorillas, thought the earth was flat for thousands of years, and did the Holocaust? God damn. Thankfully, no blatantly inaccurate AI images come up immediately upon a normal-ass Google search, though, so hopefully people are doing that instead. Granted, this little experiment of mine was about as scientifically rigorous as a frat bro counting how many beers he can butt chug before passing out. There was no falsibility and replicability and no sample size, but honestly, just doing it once and it already being inaccurate was enough for me. Call me unscientific. I think that's fucking concerning. But Sam, you may protest, there's a ton of inaccurate stuff on the internet. It is notoriously full of lies and misinformation. Remember the 2 days when the internet was convinced that Justin Bieber had cancer because of a poorly photoshopped image and it had tween girls going hashtag bald for Bieber? No, just me? What about Pizzagate? So why is an inaccurate chatbot any different? And while, yes, anyone can post anything on the World Wide Web, It is also a lot easier to sort out information and vet things as they come through a search engine or even through social media, as long as you're actually trying to look into stuff after reading it, instead of it being filtered through a predictive text model which scrapes and regurgitates information in an authoritative voice of God manner. In fact, the way it frames information, coupled with a lack of AI literacy, is already a huge issue. According to a study by Chapekis et al., most people in their dataset used AI for search information without searching for information about the technology itself. Quote, a small share of respondents use search engines to get information about AI. 1 in 10 conducted an AI-related query on a search engine during the month, but more often, search engines were a source for material generated by AI. They also say that, quote, to the extent that respondents visit news pages mentioning AI, such pages don't typically discuss the technology at length. To me, at least, this suggests that people might not be critically thinking about results provided by AI. AI literacy is way lower than we would hope, given how pervasive this technology is and how authoritatively it presents information. Just think about the fuck-ass Google AI summary on the top of every search now. Doring et al. Also raised concern about sponsored content influencing ChatGPT now and potentially even more in the future. Since it now scrapes the whole web, sponsored content will inevitably find its way in. And given how social media and search engines already are so flooded with sponsored content and how money already influences algorithms and search results, I can definitely see this being a hidden factor that we fail to consider, which will only become worse in the future. Like, I already feel like a brave Ronin defending myself against a barrage of fucking ads. Like, am I gonna have to buy a third katana from my Discord sensei? I can't afford that. In addition to hidden monetary influences, there are plain old societal biases to worry about too. To quote Kermer, quote, we must remember, however, that the perspective presented by the LLM, language learning model, is formed by the training process used by the provider. That means that the company that created the LLM is embedding cultural norms and attitudes in the model, whether they really mean to or not. This results in various stigmas being echoed for users, especially those who are LGBT+, who may have experienced dehumanization when interacting with chatbots. A study of dehumanizing language in LLMs by Leto et al. Says that just like patterns in mainstream porn, quote, transgender and lesbian populations are dehumanized more than other groups. And yet, Kermer also argues that outright banning sexual topics and questions from engagement might also have negative implications because it can, quote, insinuate to the user that the topic of sexuality is taboo, shameful, or bad. Otherwise, why would it be banned? This puts the LLM provider in a difficult position, unquestionably. Whose moral standards are they meant to follow? So, because of its numerous hidden inaccuracies and biases, I question the usefulness of AI chatbots as sexual education tools or, God forbid, sex therapists. And I would like to emphasize the importance of honest human connection when discussing these intimate subjects of sexual wellness. Again, Doring et al., I quote them a lot in this, sorry, they assert, quote, AI tools are never presented in such studies as a substitute for sex educators or sexual healthcare providers, but rather as a helpful addition in cases and situations when human experts are not immediately available. And I get that. Thankfully, in my experience, the chatbots do tend to recommend people go seek out expert advice from real humans. Good. You met my bar. It was in hell, you met it. But still, how do we know that people are going to take their recommendations seriously and use AI tools to supplement rather than replace human sources? Wouldn't a lot of people feel more comfortable talking to an immediately available, completely anonymous, non-judgmental, actually affirming to the point of detriment, but more on that later, chatbot online from the privacy of their own home than going and seeking out information from experts? And knowing our society and the way technology is hijacked by systems of capital, are we really not worried that actual sexual health professionals and educators will be replaced whenever possible, as soon as that option becomes viable and cheaper? Food for thought. Anyways, part 2, sex therapy. I'm gonna cut before this part actually, so